So in the last video, we were looking at the top view of combining these two slabs. So as you can see, I've already slipped and scored the edges. Now, in this video, I'm going to be looking at pushing and pulling the clay from either side of the clay in order to help smear and integrate the clay bodies into one another. So I'm going to be pushing and pulling from the right side and the left side to create the seamless gap. So I'm also going to be going up and down and pulling the clay, just really working the clay into each other. So up top, you'll see that I have that crack right there. That's not really going to be a problem because I'm going to end up cutting that off later. And so right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep working on fixing the other cracks towards the surfaces on the edges of the clay body. So again, I'm going to be using the push-pull method in order to smooth out these cracks. So the reason why I'm smoothing out these cracks now rather than later is because the clay body is still soft and it'll still forgive. If we try and do this later, there'll still be a lot more cracks in it and it'll be a lot weaker of a piece. So this means it can crack and break while it's drying, as well as it might crack or break when we fire it in the kiln. And we don't want neither of those to happen, so we need to make sure we're smoothing out those cracks and everything else. So right now, it's not all that pretty. We'll go through and we'll fix it up with a sponge later on. Right now, we're just worrying about making it into one cohesive piece. So now from the top, I'm also going to be working towards smoothing out the inside. So again, I'm going to be pulling clay from one side onto the other, and I won't just be doing it from one direction from the left, I'll also be doing it from the right, and then also going diagonally, both left, right, up, down. So I'm making sure that the clay is cohesive and working all the way throughout the piece. Now, it's important when you're working with clay to have two different clay, or having the same clay bodies that are of the same texture. And what I mean by that is that one clay body shouldn't be more rigid than the other. So we want both clay bodies to be soft and smooth and not quite leather hard. When we talk about leather hard clay, we're talking about the clay when it's in that stiffer stage in between wet and then bone dry. So when we're working with this clay to create slabs, we also want to make sure that we're not working with leather hard, but somewhere between wet clay and leather hard clay. So that way it'll still hold shape without becoming a pile of mush, but also at the same time to where it's not too hard to where we're seeing more and more cracks come. We're seeing the clay not responding to touch. But again, we don't want the clay body to be overly responding to touch to where anytime we touch it, it becomes mush or there's an indentation. So just a few things to keep in mind as you sculpt.